Ever had a gun pressed to your temple while wearing a wire? Scott Payne has. For 23 years, he lived among wolves, infiltrating America's most dangerous criminal organizations.
I was in the FBI for 23 years.
But it was his 18-month dance with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club that nearly cost him everything.
I did infiltrate militia groups who were there in the Outlaws.
Picture this: stripped naked in a basement, surrounded by outlaw bikers searching for surveillance equipment. Heart steady, breath controlled. One wrong move means death. The wire they're looking for? Hidden so well, they missed it by inches.
I was in for a year and a half, and then they brought me down into the basement of the clubhouse and stripped me at gunpoint, looking for a wire. I was wired to the hilt, and they missed it.
Out of the FBI's 600 certified undercover agents, only 30 to 50 have ever led multiple long-term operations. Even fewer have successfully infiltrated outlaw motorcycle clubs. Payne did both. His cases boast a 99.9% guilty plea rate. So this isn't just another cop story. It's about a man who spent half his life pretending to be other people. A deep cover operative who earned the trust of hardened criminals, shared their brotherhood, lived their lifestyle, then took them down from the inside. The question isn't whether he made it out alive. The question is, how much of his soul survived the journey? Ride at your own risk. Ever wondered what makes a man choose to live among wolves? The year was 1993. Greenville, South Carolina. Hot asphalt and hotter tempers. A young patrol officer named Scott Payne was about to make his first undercover drug buy. Heart racing, palms sweaty. One wrong word or move meant death. Just another cop? Hell no.
I usually term it as I was a real cop first in South Carolina. 5 years. So 3 as a uniform patrol, but 2 as a vice and narcotics investigator. So on a street level, I was already starting to do undercover work, making street buys and stuff like that. So that's when I started really getting the undercover bug.
With ink etched into his skin and rebellion flowing through his veins, Payne never fit the FBI's squeaky clean image. But fate? She had different plans. Those tattoos that would have made J. Edgar Hoover roll in his grave became golden tickets to an underworld few survived to talk about. 5 years on the streets taught him more than any academy ever could. 3 grinding years in uniform patrol. 2 adrenaline-soaked years in vice and narcotics. But it was those late-night drug buys, pulse pounding through his chest, that awakened something dark inside him. The undercover bug. A dangerous addiction that would define his life. Think you know pressure? Try sitting across from a dealer, lying through your teeth while maintaining perfect control of your vital signs. Most cops can't do it. Their bodies betray them. Not Payne. He was different, born different. 1998, the FBI Academy came calling. Picture this: a country boy from South Carolina thrown straight into the concrete jungle of New York City.
But I got New York City.
Oh, wow.
So here I am, a country boy out of South Carolina, and my first office is New York City.
His first assignment? Colombian drug cartels.
I ended up as a case agent going to the Colombian drug squad.
The Twin Towers still stood proud back then, casting long shadows over streets that would forge him into something else entirely. But here's the kicker. Out of 600 certified undercover agents in the FBI's entire history, only 30 to 50 have ever led multiple long-term operations. Why so few? Because living another life, truly living it, breaks most men, shatters them into pieces they can never quite put back together. So what makes someone choose this life? Maybe it was those childhood dreams of making a difference. Maybe it was that first taste of undercover work in Greenville. Or maybe, just maybe, some men are born to walk between worlds. The streets were calling him to something bigger, something darker. The Outlaws Motorcycle Club was waiting in the shadows, their Harleys rumbling like distant thunder. And Scott Payne? He was about to become someone else entirely, a ghost, a shadow, a man with no name. Hey brothers, tired of YouTube's BS and censorship? It's time to break free. That's why I've shifted gears to Patreon, where I can bring you the raw, uncensored content you crave. Join my Patreon crew and get an insane package deal. Exclusive early access to all videos, days before YouTube, 100% ad-free viewing experience. Uncensored, no-holds-barred community discussions, double the content. 2 killer videos every single week. VIP access, direct interaction with yours truly, inside scoop, exclusive biker world updates you won't find anywhere else. Ready to join the elite? Hit that Patreon link now. Your support doesn't just keep us rolling, it fuels a revolution of uncensored, unrestricted content. Join now and unlock a world of exclusive benefits. Think infiltrating a 1%er club is about leather cuts and Harleys? Think again. 2005. Massachusetts back roads, the rumble of V-twins cutting through the night air. Scott Payne's southern drawl stood out like a rebel yell in Yankee territory. But that accent? Pure gold.
Well, what you hope for is that your case team has great intelligence. So if you're coming in as an undercover, hopefully they've already been on these people long enough to say, hey, that guy right there, he is an attention, hoe. He's got to have attention. He loves to be surrounded by big guys. That's good stuff to know, because back then I was running about 6'4", 280 whatever pounds. And of course, in Massachusetts, as soon as I open my mouth with this accent, people are like, where are you from, you know? So you can use that. I use that to my advantage.
The thing about outlaw bikers, they respect authenticity, even when it's a lie. First rule of going deep cover: stay close to who you are. Change too much, you slip up, get caught, get dead. So Payne became a shadow version of himself, an international theft ring, moving hot merchandise across the Mexican border.
As I hung out, I let them kind of see me, get myself known, and then I never joined. They asked me to join, but I never joined because I was portraying a high-ranking member of an international theft ring.
Close enough to the truth to sell the lie. But ever seen a Shark Tank at feeding time? That's what it feels like walking into your first Northeast regional meeting. 50 pairs of eyes sizing you up, measuring your worth, looking for any sign of weakness. One wrong move, one slip in the act. Game over.
Next thing you know, you're invited to the Northeast regional, meetup. And you go into a sea of black leather and testosterone, and everybody's looking at you like, who the hell are you? And the more people you meet, the more scrutinized you are. And so that's kind of how I did it. Almost like a hanger. That's what they would call that, a hang around.
3 months in, 6 months, a year. Time bleeds together when you're living another life. Every conversation is recorded. Every handshake is a potential death sentence. Building trust one beer at a time, one ride at a time, one crime at a time.
So a lot of these members were already predicated on dope deals and stuff and arrests that they'd seen there. But really there wasn't a whole lot I had to wait for, because as soon as I said I was from McAllen, Texas, the president of that chapter said, how much can you get a kilo for? And can you bring me one? And I'm like, well, that was fast.
Psychology screws with your head. Insurance scams graduate to carjackings.
So as time went on in that case, they start finding out that I actually do some illegal stuff too, and then they start seeing some things I do, whether it's, a truckload. And it all started with them. They were doing insurance scams where they would report their motorcycle or car stolen, sell it to me for a price. They don't know what I'm getting for it in Mexico.
Right.
And then I supposedly take the vehicles all down to Mexico, and they get their insurance money. And then it started like that.
Small-time scores evolve into major operations, and each success drew him deeper into their world.
And eventually we led to the point to where, again, predicated, but we led to a point where we did a drug protection. We had 40 kilos of cocaine, real, 1,000 pounds of weed, and they met other undercovers, and because the whole thing was the president especially wanted a pipeline into a drug supply.
Into their brotherhood. And that's the real danger. When the lines start to blur. when you catch yourself forgetting which side you're really on. 18 months deep. The club becomes family. The lies become truth. The fake persona starts feeling more real than your actual life. Your wife's voice on the phone sounds distant, like it's coming from another world. Because it is. But the basement? That's where everything changed. That's where the game turned deadly. And Scott Payne was about to learn just how thin the line between life and death really is. "18 months of lies led to this moment. A basement in Massachusetts. Air thick with tension and cigarette smoke. 4 outlaws surrounding a naked federal agent, searching for wires. Guns trained, fingers on triggers, hearts pounding in the dark.
I was in for a year and a half, and then they brought me down into it's more like a cellar, but into the basement of the clubhouse and stripped me at gunpoint, looking for a wire, after a year and a half.
3 seconds. That's how long it takes to die in this business. 3 seconds between discovery and darkness, between life and a closed casket. Even with SWAT teams outside, you're alone in moments like these. The enforcer's hands moved closer. Strange how the mind works when death breathes down your neck. Time slows. Senses sharpen. Every heartbeat sounds like thunder. But Payne's exterior remained ice cold. Had to.
And I'm looking into his eyes, and I'm not saying it out loud, but my face is saying, am I gonna be all right? And his face back to me was kind of, you're gonna be all right. But then he ends up grabbing the piece of clothing and looks pretty much right where the equipment was at. And you can hear me in the background going, and I don't even know I'm doing it.
18 months of deep cover training kicked in. Pure instinct now. 40 kilos of cocaine, 1,000 pounds of weed, a major drug operation hanging in the balance, and 1 wire they hadn't found yet. The enforcer, a man who'd shared beers, stories, brotherhood with Payne, ran his hands inches from the concealed equipment. Just a whisker away from discovery. Just a breath away from death. Want to know true fear? It's not the guns, not the threats. It's looking into the eyes of someone who trusts you completely, knowing you're about to destroy their world. Someone who would die for you, someone you're betraying. The wire remained hidden, but something else was exposed that night. The cost of living in the shadows, the price of pretending. Because each successful deception carried weight, built pressure, changed a man in ways the FBI manual never mentioned. Ever stare into the abyss? In that basement, the abyss stared back. And Scott Payne glimpsed something terrifying. Not in the outlaws surrounding him, but in himself. The line between who he was and who he pretended to be had started to blur. The enforcer nodded. The guns lowered. The test was passed. But the real trial was just beginning. Because now Payne was deeper than any undercover before him. Trusted with their biggest scores, their darkest secrets, their lives. And every moment brought him closer to the day when he'd have to tear it all down. Think you know what comes next? Think again. After surviving the basement, Payne's stock soared within the club. The president himself started calling for advice, for help planning bigger scores. Trust in their world was measured in criminal opportunities. The bigger the crime, the deeper the trust. And Payne had earned their complete confidence. The scale of operations exploded almost overnight. No more penny ante insurance scams or small-time theft. Now, they were moving serious weight. International drug shipments worth millions. Stolen merchandise flowing across borders like water. The club's reach extended far beyond their local territory, and Payne found himself at the center of it all. Thursday nights at the clubhouse became a ritual. Brothers gathering around worn wooden tables. Whiskey flowing freely as they planned their next moves. Payne's recording device captured every word, every laugh, every damning confession. But somewhere in his mind, a voice kept whispering, "Are you the bad guy here?" The club president treated him like blood. Why wouldn't he? This southern boy had proven himself time and again, moved their merchandise without a hitch, protected their interests with fierce loyalty, became more than just a member, became family. Family, that word haunts every undercover, because somewhere in another world your real family waits. Your wife is wondering if you'll come home tonight. Your kids are growing up with a ghost for a father. Each day, undercover carved another piece from your soul, leaving another scar on your psyche.
I was a ghost at home. I would arrive home and I would be so beat because not only was I undercover on 2 different cases, I was the primary relief supervisor for the squad, which means that the boss is gone, you're running the squad.
The rush was intoxicating, hard to admit, but true. Some nights, Payne would catch himself truly enjoying it.
On that 2-year case, there was one guy in particular, and his name was Scott, and he wasn't a patch member either, but everybody in the Outlaws respected him, and he had some working ties with mafia stuff too. But he and I just bonded. We were like they say, man, it's cliche, right? 2 peas in a pod. It's just like, man, we would finish each other's sentences, work out together, drink together.
Not playing a role anymore, but living it. Those were the nights that scared him most. Each success drew him deeper into their world. The Outlaw members had his back even through his surgeries.
I was treated better by the Outlaws than the FBI a lot of times. You know, I had, my first or second shoulder surgery at that time. The day of my surgery, I had 5 messages from one of the case team members. And they knew I was in surgery. They were just like, hey, when you get this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I'm like, what the hey, brother, I'm just checking on you. How's things going? How's your shoulder? I love you, brother. I love you too. And you're like, it's not like I'm going to turn bad and go to the dark side against the FBI.
Every criminal enterprise he helped plan added weight to the eventual indictments. The evidence mounted like a tsunami building offshore, and nearly every case he built ended in conviction. 99.9% of targets knew better than to fight the charges.
I'm telling you, 99.9% of the people I've ever been undercover against, they all plead guilty. Because the only thing they can really do, the defense can really do, is either claim entrapment or try to make you look like a bad person on the stand.
But statistics don't tell you how many pieces of yourself you lose along the way. The end was coming. Payne could feel it in his bones. Soon he'd have to tear it all down, destroy the brotherhood he'd infiltrated, betray the trust he'd earned. Men who would take bullets for him would instead face federal charges because of him. The real question wasn't whether he could do it. It was if, after it was all over, could he find his way back to himself? And would there be anything left to find? Time moves different when you're undercover. A day feels like a week, a month like a year. And after nearly 2 years living as someone else, reality starts to bend. But in that time, the case grew solid. Hundreds of hours of recordings, documented drug deals, international theft operations, the kind of evidence that makes defense attorneys advise their clients to plead guilty before the indictment is even read. But ending an undercover operation isn't like turning off a switch. On a Friday night at the clubhouse, the familiar rumble of Harleys pulling in, brothers greeting brothers with backslapping hugs. Only this time, Payne knew it was one of the last. The takedown was coming. 3 different FBI field offices coordinating simultaneous raids, SWAT teams rehearsing breach patterns. Everyone was waiting for his signal. Strange how guilt sneaks up on you. These men had committed serious crimes, deserved what was coming. But they'd also shared their lives with him, trusted him, and yet he was about to put them all behind bars. The president pulled him aside that night, wanted to discuss expanding their operations, more territory, bigger scores, plans for the future, plans that would never happen. This final week was the hardest. Every conversation would be the last. Every handshake might be the one you remember in court. Brothers talking about their kids, their dreams, their plans, all while the clock ticked down to 0 hour. The raid itself was almost anticlimactic. Multiple SWAT teams hitting multiple locations simultaneously. The element of surprise was so complete that most of them were in cuffs before they understood what was happening. The president's face when he saw Payne standing with the FBI. That look alone would fuel nightmares for years to come. But ending the operation didn't end the toll it took. You don't just switch off 2 years of living another life. Don't just forget the brotherhood, even if it was built on lies. The dreams come at night, memories twisted into accusations, faces of men who trusted you, now serving decades because of that trust. They say undercover work changes you. They don't tell you it haunts you. Don't mention how the ghost of who you pretended to be never quite leaves. How you catch yourself missing it sometimes. The intensity, the rush, the clarity of purpose. The Outlaws case was over, but its shadow would stretch far into the future. Because some lies, even necessary ones, leave scars that never fully heal. And Scott Payne, he was about to learn that getting out is sometimes harder than getting in. Some wounds don't bleed, some scars don't show. After 23 years living other lives, Scott Payne emerged from the shadows in 2021. The Outlaws case had been his masterpiece, and nearly his undoing. But here's the thing about spending so long in the darkness. The light can burn just as bad. Funny how trauma works. It wasn't the gunpoint strip searches that broke him, nor the constant threat of death. It was a routine back surgery gone wrong, 3 weeks of not being able to breathe properly. That's what finally cracked the armor. PTSD doesn't care about your tough guy image.
I had PTSD. You asked me basically a question about do I regret, kind of. Yes. You're not asking me if I regret, but it's how I was thinking. I thought one day, I'm like, man, if this wouldn't have happened, if those back surgery complications wouldn't have happened, and for 3 weeks I wouldn't have been through living hell, and all these doctors didn't know what was going on, I wouldn't have PTSD. One thing, and I would have never had to suffer any of that.
The phone started ringing after the Rolling Stone article broke. Joe Pistone, the real Donnie Brasco, calling to check on him. Other legendary undercovers reaching out.
But if I didn't have that, when I crashed, Joe Pistone wouldn't have been calling me, the Donnie Brasco, other mentors, Steve Salman, whatever, Mike Solari, all these guys wouldn't have been calling me and saying Country is my nickname, Big Country. I'm more medium now, but I was bigger then. But they'd be like, hey, Big Country, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm doing okay. They told me, they're the ones that told me, take care of yourself, take care of your family, but as soon as you can, put pen to paper about everything you've learned in this whole thing, because that's how we get our best blocks of instruction, and that's how you pay it forward. And they were 100% right. But when Glenn was running for mayor, I met John T. And then after that, John T gets Richie, and they start going in. And you know how it is. It's like, hey, man, you got some good stories. let me introduce you to this person. And then by the time the Rolling Stones article came out, we started getting hit by everybody. You know, all the big, companies, Leonardo DiCaprio, Scarlett Johansson, Amblin Entertainment, Steve Spielberg, all this stuff. And that's when the literary agents were calling Rolling Stone. And I'm like, I don't want to do a book. I mean, the way I saw it is I don't want to go around every town and they convinced me, look, man, this is your legacy for your family.
They all said the same thing. Write it down. Tell the story. Help the next generation survive what nearly destroyed you. Remember those conviction stats? 99.9% guilty pleas. Looks good on paper. But they don't tell you about the nights you wake up in cold sweats, remembering faces of men who called you brother before you sent them to prison. Doesn't capture the cost of excellence in this dark art. The FBI took away his director's award when he went public. Bureaucrats afraid of shadows. But Payne wasn't after medals anymore. He was after something bigger, change. Mental health awareness in law enforcement. Breaking down the walls that keep good cops from getting help.
I'm big on mental health, especially in the law enforcement world. And the same thing for military. I mean, what are we number one for? You know what law enforcement military is number one for? Divorce, suicide,
Yep.
Alcoholism, which can tie in pills and everything else you shove down your throat these days.
Teaching new agents that it's okay to be human.
It is not an easy balance, and I didn't do great at it. I don't think I did as terrible as some, but again, it's not a competition, right?
23 years, hundreds of cases, thousands of hours wearing wires, living lies, dancing with devils. The toll adds up, it changes you. But maybe that's the point. Maybe you have to lose yourself to truly understand who you are. They still call him for advice. New undercovers facing old demons. He tells them what he wishes someone had told him. The hardest person to forgive is yourself. And the toughest cover to maintain is pretending you're unchanged by it all. March 2025. His book hits shelves. Not just another war story, not just another cop tale, but a map for those who walk between worlds. A guide for ghost riders who risk everything to protect people who will never know their names. Scott Payne made it back from the shadows. Not unchanged, not unscathed, but alive. Still fighting the good fight, just differently now. Because some battles don't end when the case closes. Some wars don't stop when the bullets do. And some ghosts you learn to live with.